Good evening, everyone. We might get started at I could have somebody there that would be effective law.
Recognise brave individuals. Remember those sacrifice.
Almighty God, we ask you to aid you to spectrum from its delivery.
That special counsel do have one. The first item the first recommendation around receiving a notice, and the second recommendation subject to only those on block. Seconding that?
No, sorry, I'd rather that they be
Separately. Happy to second one. That Burns, sorry. Either of you want to? Someone like to move?
I've read what's gone on, and I fully agree with the why they've come back to that judgment. I can see then why they've gone about it.
Schofield.
Thank you. Look, while I understand exactly what is happening, if we're looking long-term in Victor Harbor, I really don't believe that that parcel of land is really the right place. And the reason being is the growth in Victor Harbor, its main interest into our city. It is road locked on so many occasions, and I would have thought that the best location for this would be somewhere on the outer sides of Victor Harbor where the city will grow around it. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Councillor Mann, did you want to speak?
Yeah, just a question to administration. I haven't had a chance to overview of what they're relating to.
Graham, could you respond to that?
So through the Mayor, the longer term goal for the site was to have a master plan, and what's triggered some of those, the revocation work to happen earlier was the desire by the government part of the site for an ambulance station. the council more recently went through a process of consultation for the revocation of the community dedication on that land, on which the ambulance station portion is proposed. And then also, as part of the broader master planning work, looked at doing a swap of some of the 44 Adelaide Road land, the back part of that, to go to community land, and then the balance, or a like size portion of the community land at the front part of the site to go to the same zone or the same freehold title, basically, that's on. So it's a like-for-like swap, essentially. So the minister's not satisfied that we're specific enough about what we want to use that for. We have tried to explain that it would be used for what it is now, essentially, like swap. But that hasn't quite satisfied the minister. So the ambulance station portion of the site is very clear as to what that use will be. So he's declined the revocation application that we've put in, but also alluded to the fact that split them off. The ambulance station isn't the issue that he has, it's with the remainder of it. So we can still deal with that at a later stage, but it would just be separate processes. So hence the suggestion, so that side of things can continue, the revocation be resubmitted or relodged just with the ambulance station site at this point.
So sorry, thank you for that. Just so it's got the orange square at the front left next to where we've got the, that's the site that he's not going to give it to.
Correct. At this point in time, until we've done some more master plan work and determine or be more precise as to what it would be used for.
And I guess wasn't the intention if a commercial as well, giving them that ambulance station and revocating, that's why we put it together, the potential for the increased benefits.
We thought that was the strategic approach, yes.
Yeah, so
That's not to say that that can't happen, but
Yeah.
what the minister's office has been very clear to be able to present it to the minister to say that the application has met every element of the legislation. It doesn't meet it because we have no purpose for that land at this current time. But even though we argued the point to saying we're actually swapping the back of the freehold property to the front of the community land, it's just a like-for-like swap. That doesn't matter. It still needs to have a purpose. That's the only point that we've actually not been able to meet. So until we have a master plan of what council's intent is for that land, they won't do that revocation. The ambulance station, I don't think we were bargaining one off of the other.
yeah, if our intent was just to sell it for commercial benefit, for example, into master.
Well, we'd have to actually clearly indicate that in our application to the minister that that's what we're going to do with it.
Yeah, so if we, instead of pulling it out, just said this is an option we're looking at selling it commercially with the site next to it, let's lodge it again, is that?
Through the mayor, there's no certainty in an option that we're looking at. So that he's after certainty,
So
a commitment. So
yeah.
if it's just an option that we're looking at, but it's one of other options, that's not going to satisfy the minister.
No, and even he wouldn't look at the application, and we asked, okay, can you just deal with the ambulance station for now with this application, and we'll come back to you with the other parcel of land. Because we've submitted it all together, he will only consider it all together. Hence, split them, deal with the ambulance station, and we'll continue the other parcel, articulate it a bit better and resubmit.
I guess my question around that is that they want their go through as quickly as possible. Whether they ever get that other revocation done, I don't know whether strategically it makes more sense still putting them together and getting through, because it will get looked at that way. And
No,
whether
I didn't get that sense speaking with Alex Hart, who's the minister advisor. Get that impression at all. But yes, they are pushing, and there are other matters that obviously potential session in regards to that, but it doesn't relate to.
I just had a question of clarification. It was my understanding the government had elected that as site, and obviously as part of that they would have had to look at traffic implications of the station there. I'm just wondering if to do with Councillor Shelfield's point that there's a lot of proposed but actual development that have any implications. I've taken all that.
They've taken all of that into account. They specifically picked this site. They looked at a number of sites throughout Victor Harbour. It does have a back access as well. It's not the only access it has onto Adelaide Road, and I guess the argument they say there are ambulance stations in metropolitan Adelaide and extremely busy areas that function very well.
Councillor Corripa, you wanted to speak? And
Yeah,
then
thank you,
Councillor
Mayor.
Kemp.
I think originally I thought this was a good idea, a good spot for it, but further consideration with the amount of development that is already sort of agreeing with Councillor Schofield that traffic there, especially during peak hour times of school, because I think in Canaloo than there, I've been on there and I've been gridlocked, and I'm worried that ambulance station there is not going to achieve what it needs to achieve. Also, though, having said that, I do agree with Councillor Mann about land, make sure that we get out of the land. So, thanks.
Yeah, through the Mayor, not so much about whether it's a good site or not. They've deemed it as being an appropriate site for them, and it has centrality to the region. You know, using a terminology a bit like a gravity model, that is the hot spot for them, or the sweet spot. Yep. But in some respect, in terms of process and council being a bit reserved in terms of whether or not it wants to continue to support that as a site, or continue with the negotiation for that land. It's important that, in my view, that council will continue to be engaged in that and continue through that process on the basis that if it doesn't maintain a presence in the conversation, there's a risk that it could be compulsorily acquired by the minister anyway, which leaves the council without any room to negotiate and any bargaining power whatsoever in terms of what the access might look like and other elements of the site that we can speak into better if we have a seat at the table. So there is a risk that that seat would be taken away through a compulsory acquisition. There's something to be mindful of.
Just a supplementary question. I totally understand what you're saying and I take that on board, but don't we risk that with any development, especially anything that's over, I think, $12 million, where the council pushes back on a developer or a development, and then they just ask for major project status? Basically, we have no say anyway, and we've done that before. Let's see whether we're negotiating with a developer or we're negotiating with the government. We still need to be able to make sure that we have a say in what goes. Compulsory acquisition, not something that government takes lightly, because it tends to attract negative publicity from the community.
Agree, Councillor Corimba, but you've got two separate processes around the actual land, which council currently does own. It's different, yes. There's a developer could come in and over a certain amount, and the state government says they'll take the approval process away from council, and they can develop what they want on that land. To a certain extent, this is around the actual ownership of the land. There's about having a return on that investment and getting nothing for that investment.
I'll just go to Councillor Kemp, and I'll come back to you, Councillor Mann, with the questions you've got.
Thanks, Ms. Jenkins. Just a question before I make a comment. The verification of this land and that, will that take out the old current building site or doesn't, are we going to demolish that building and turn it into a reserve for public use until we make a decision on what we
This revocation has nothing to do with the house. The house still sits as it is. This is about actually changing the title of that current land to freehold.
Sorry, I didn't make my question clear enough.
Yeah.
With the replication of the land and the construction of the ambulance site, that taking part of the house, so the house will be demolished anyway under the construction of the ambulance. Or if it doesn't, then are we going to demolish that house, structures on that land, make it more reserve until we make a decision?
It's a very good question, and it's probably something we can do as part of our negotiations, because there will be some requirement to use a portion of that land as an access road, and we are currently still negotiating with the state government on that. So can't answer that, but
That's fine.
negotiating
No, no.
around it.
It does impact. So we may get a
Could be
demolition.
another lever.
We may get a demolition from, excellent. The opportunity, I think, look at things. Emergency services look at, location, about response times, and as Victor Harbour's growing, and of course I would imagine the ambulance service currently comes out of Torrens Road and heads to Port Elliot, and or the Goolwa group can get across. So putting it in that location is the most central area response times to actually service Burrows Middleton and service Burrows and plus up towards Adelaide Road. So I think for them, they have their ways and means to negotiate hazards. They do now on Torrens and Highmarsh Road, when it's peak period. They have lights and sirens, I suppose, use that to actually clear away for themselves. But I think it's a good location for an ambulance service to respond in any direction in a given time frame. That's excellent to have a site available for that to happen. So supporting this.
Gentleman?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yeah, just to clarify, so I'm not saying anything about the proposed site being bad for an ambulance. But in terms of the new request we're putting up, it's just in relation to the blue section, saying we're just going to, the purple as well, just the blue. Yep, so it's just we're putting that up. That's, yeah, that's it. Yep, so everything else in terms of our commercial, all that stays the same. Thanks.
Does anybody have any questions or anything? Councillor Corimbo? Difficult to tell. In that case, Angela, Councillor Schiller, did you want to close the debate?
Another thing to bear in mind is during the election, Chris Dickin was going hard on that election promise. So I think they'll be pretty keen to get hold of it. So that's another thing to bear in mind. And we also voted on this not that long ago, and that particular motion to revoke that, to take that to the minister to revoke the area for the ambulance passed. So it's another situation where we're backflipping quite quickly.
Thank you. And can I just remind you, remind elected members that when you are closing off debate, not to introduce any to that. Now put that to the floor. Those in favour? Those against? It's carried. Thank you. The next item, the first recommendation is that we move to confidence because the motion relates to current litigation involving the council, which will be discussed at this meeting, and this information may not be made available to the would detrimentally affect the position during the course of. Someone like to move today? Thank you, Councillor Burns, and second to Councillor Henderson. Any speak to that or have any questions? Those in favour? Charles, and thank you for those that are listening on our live streaming. Moving into